Does Starfleet Academy break the Prime Directive, and is it even realistic? For decades, Star Trek has challenged us to imagine a better future. A future guided by ethics, by curiosity, by restraint, and perhaps most importantly, by principles. At the center of those principles sits one of the most famous rules in science fiction history, the Prime Directive. No interference, no contamination, no playing God with developing civilizations. It sounds simple, but if you've watched enough Star Trek, you already know it almost never is. Now, with Starfleet Academy stepping into the spotlight, fans are asking a fascinating question. Is this show honoring the very ideals that built the franchise, or is it quietly breaking them? And beyond that, is anything about Starfleet Academy actually realistic? Today, we're diving deep into the philosophy, the science, the leadership model, and the moral framework behind the series. Because what happens inside that academy shapes every captain, every officer, and every decision that follows. The Prime Directive is more than policy. It is the moral backbone of the Federation. Its purpose is rooted in humility, the recognition that advanced societies should not impose their will on less developed ones. History, both fictional and real, shows us exactly what happens when powerful cultures interfere with vulnerable ones. Collapse, dependency, cultural erasure. So the Federation built a rule designed to prevent that. But here's where Starfleet Academy becomes especially interesting, because this is where cadets learn how to interpret that rule, not just memorize it. Imagine being a young cadet. You're taught not to interfere, but then you're shown simulations where millions could die if you do nothing. Do you obey the directive, or do you act? This tension has always lived at the heart of Star Trek storytelling. Rules versus compassion, logic versus instinct, procedure versus conscience. If Starfleet Academy leans into that conflict, it isn't betraying the franchise, it's honoring it. Because the Prime Directive was never meant to eliminate moral struggle. It was meant to force officers to confront it. But some fans worry the new generation of shows prioritizes drama over discipline, more emotional reactions, more impulsive decisions, less measured restraint. Would Starfleet really train officers this way? While Star Trek is science fiction, its institutional design has always been surprisingly grounded. Starfleet operates like a hybrid between a military academy, a scientific research institution, and a diplomatic corps. Cadets aren't just trained to fight. They're trained to think, analyze, negotiate, and lead. In many ways, it resembles the world's most elite leadership academies. So if Starfleet Academy portrays students as reckless thrill seekers, that would feel off. But if it shows brilliant young minds wrestling with enormous responsibility, that feels very Starfleet. Is the Prime Directive even realistic? Surprisingly, yes. Versions of it already exist. Anthropologists avoid contact with isolated tribes. International law restricts interference with sovereign cultures. Space agencies debate planetary protection. The directive is less fantasy than philosophical projection. It asks what kind of species we want to be when we become powerful. Realism is also about people. Would young adults truly handle this level of pressure? Consider what Starfleet officers eventually face. First contact scenarios, warp crises, temporal anomalies, extinction-level decisions. Training for that can't be casual. If the Academy is believable, it should feel intense, competitive, and demanding. Failure should be common, because the stakes are enormous. Starfleet doesn't produce followers, it produces decision-makers. Future captains must operate without certainty, without perfect information, often without backup. If Starfleet Academy depicts cadets being encouraged to challenge authority respectfully, that's not unrealistic. That's essential. Great commanders are ethical thinkers. The directive isn't a cage, it's a compass. Critics sometimes argue newer Trek shows lean too heavily into emotional storytelling. But emotion has always been part of Star Trek. The real question isn't whether emotion exists, it's whether emotion overrides judgment. If cadets learn emotional regulation rather than suppression, that is incredibly realistic. Leadership is emotional discipline. Now let's talk science. Star Trek has historically consulted physicists, engineers, and futurists because believable science builds immersive worlds. Future officers would need expertise across astrophysics, xenobiology, engineering, linguistics, and diplomacy. A captain can't say, "That's not my department," when a starship is in danger. Another overlooked dimension is psychological screening. Officers encounter trauma regularly: loss, impossible choices, deep space isolation. Portraying mental resilience training would enhance authenticity because the Federation wouldn't gamble ships on unstable leadership. Let's circle back to the Prime Directive. What if non-interference allows suffering? What if helping saves lives but destroys cultural evolution? There are no easy answers, and that's why Star Trek has endured. It invites us into the debate. Some fear the show could drift into teen drama territory, romance, rivalries, identity struggles. But would those exist in a real academy? Of course. Put brilliant minds together under pressure and emotion is inevitable. The key is balance. Personal stories should deepen the mission, not distract from it. Captains are forged through experience. Failure is another realism check. Starfleet should be brutally hard. Not everyone passes command simulations. Remember what made Kirk legendary. He redefined the no-win scenario. If the Academy explores that philosophy, it reinforces Trek's most hopeful idea: human ingenuity can transcend limitations. Could a real Starfleet exist someday? Maybe not exactly as we see it, but the trajectory is fascinating. Artificial intelligence is advancing. Quantum research is accelerating. Private space travel is no longer fantasy. We are slowly becoming a spacefaring species. Star Trek has always reflected not where we are, but where we might go. Now here's a deeper question. Does strict adherence to the Prime Directive ever become unethical? Imagine watching a civilization perish from a preventable disaster. You have the power to intervene, but the law says no. Is obedience moral? Or is compassion the higher law? Power without restraint is dangerous, but restraint without empathy is equally dangerous. Great officers must navigate that tension. If Starfleet Academy succeeds, it won't present perfect heroes. It will present evolving ones. Students who question themselves and grow into responsibility. Leadership isn't about perfection. It's about transformation. Does Starfleet Academy break the Prime Directive? Not necessarily. Examining it from fresh perspectives might strengthen its importance. Every generation must reinterpret foundational values. Otherwise, they become hollow traditions. Star Trek has never really been about space. It has always been about us, our ethics, ambitions, flaws, and hope. The Prime Directive asks humanity a profound question. When we gain the power to shape worlds, will we choose wisdom? Starfleet Academy represents the beginning of that answer. Before there are captains, there are students, learning not just how to command ships, but how to carry the future responsibly. And maybe that is the most realistic idea of all. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Starfleet Academy will honor the spirit of Star Trek, or drift too far from the philosophical roots that made the franchise legendary? If you were a cadet, would you always obey the Prime Directive, or risk breaking it to save lives? Tell me in the comments. And if you enjoy deep television analysis like this, make sure you subscribe, because the future is still being written.